Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the VIP room. This week we have a special guest, a man well known for his analysis videos of the show BoJack Horseman, and the man who taught me what a durag is. We have Shady Doorag. Welcome to the show.
Hey, hello, how do you do?
How you doing, Shady?
I'm doing fine. It's a little hot here, but can't complain.
Sure you can. It's just people might not be very pleased about it, and then they'll complain about that, and the cycle goes on. Anyways, I'll start by skipping over the usual how you got started on YouTube to how you went from MLP to BoJack Horseman.
Okay, so yeah, when I first, started YouTube, I just started doing a bunch of random things. Eventually, I jumped into My Little Pony, not because I liked it. I honestly did not like the show My Little Pony. No, that's not a denial. It is true. I just didn't like My Little Pony. But the fans I had at the time, when I mentioned My Little Pony, they said they liked that I talked about it, even though I was saying a lot of negative stuff. And they said they would appreciate videos on it. So I went ahead and started making My Little Pony analysis or reviews. And that's just kind of where I went for a time. It wasn't really a passion, but people asked for it, so I did it. And then after I graduated college, I had a bit more free time on my hands, so I started branching out to other shows, Miraculous being one of them, which is a show I still review to this day. And at the time, I started watching BoJack Horseman. Nobody asked me to review it, but some people I watched recommended it. So I started watching it, watched what was 4 seasons at the time, and there was a conversation going on with the character Diane Nguyen. And it was a conversation that was constantly brought up. People were asking, why don't people like Diane Nguyen? Why don't people like Diane Nguyen? And I would answer this question passionately because I understood exactly why they didn't like Diane Nguyen. But I got tired of giving the same answer over and over and over again. So I went and I looked up if anybody had made a video on the subject, and very few people made videos on BoJack Horseman, period, let alone on Diane. So I got frustrated and said, well, I have a YouTube channel. I'll just make a video, and anytime anybody asks me this question, I can just send them to this video, and that way I don't have to give the same answer all over again. And it very surprisingly blew up. And I started getting a ton of views, so I was like, okay, well, BoJack Horseman analysis. I know what the people want, so I'll give it to them.
And it's been very good. I quite enjoy your videos. I've spoiled a heap of the show for myself by watching them when I know I really shouldn't until after I watched the show.
You're not the first person to tell me that. I've seen some. It kind of hurts when people say that, but at the same time, it's a compliment to say that they're not even familiar with the source material, but they still watch your videos. But it's like, the conversation, let's have it.
Well, I've seen season 1, I believe, all of that, in a part of season 2, and then I stopped watching it for a while, but every time I watch one of your videos, I'm like, I really gotta watch this show again. I actually get invested in wanting to find out more and learning the context, because you make it seem a lot more interesting than I originally thought the show was.
Yeah, that can be a good thing as well as a negative. I've had people come to my videos, watch them, and think the show goes a certain direction, but what they don't realize is that I'm putting pieces of the show together to demonstrate the point, and they feel like I've misrepresented it because the show didn't tell the story the same way I did. And I'm like, I didn't do that on purpose. I just put the pieces together.
That's always a fun thing that happens. I think your BoJack Horseman is... Are you still doing videos for that? I believe you had one not too long ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recently did a video about the character Sebastian St. Clair, questioning whether or not a person is a bad person just because they've done something good, but for the wrong reasons. Season 6 is supposed to be coming out soon, but we haven't had a release date. So once that comes out, I'll be going full force on that.
Awesome. When that comes out, I probably got at least 6 months before it comes out on Australian Netflix, so I have plenty of time to catch up. It's so annoying waiting for stuff in Netflix, because it comes out and everyone's like, it's out. I'm like, I don't have a VPN. I can't watch it yet. I guess we should jump back to how you got started. As you said, you had done a bunch of random things, and I think you've had like 2 channels prior to your current one.
I've had a lot more than that, but the 2 channels that I constantly mention, those were the main channels I had. The first channel I had, it was just a bunch of AMVs. I was inspired heavily by AMVs back in the day, and I would just take songs that I knew, usually Disney songs, and I would just edit them to other movies or other shows. And I did that for a while, but then I realized that you could go much farther on YouTube if you try to make it a business. And so I stopped doing that because you can't really do that with copyrighted music, make a business out of it. And I switched to a channel that I called Random Person. And on there, I was heavily into The Legend of Zelda, and I talked about video games. And that's where my current look came from for my avatar, the grayed out dude with the mask and the glasses and whatnot. That's where he came from, because back then I was very antsy about letting people know what I look like and being online and whatnot. So I put a mask over myself and it looked stupid. So I put a do-rag on to make it look less stupid. And then people couldn't see my eyes, so I put shades on. Then when I moved to this current channel that I had, I basically kept the look, but I removed the mask so that I could make facial expression. And I did that because back then I decided to quit being a Random Person because I was in school and I felt that it was distracting me from school. But after I quit, I had this hunger to make content. I've been making content for, I want to say 5 years once I quit Random Person. And I needed to make something. So I said, okay, fine. I'll start a new channel and it'll just be whatever I feel like talking about. That's all it'll be. And I went on with the look I had and I called myself Crooked Shades. That name was taken. So Shady Doorags was what I went with.
Well, I guess that answers the question of where did the avatar of Random Person came from.
Yeah, he was originally a little chibi guy. Like, it was based off of me in real life, and then I just made a chibi version of him for another unrelated project, and I just moved that one to my Shady Doorags channel. And then I realized people were associating me with this character, so I made a taller version of him that looked a bit more like me.
That's always a good plan. I mean, that's sort of what I did with my channel and the character of Twilight Genesis, which will be my avatar in this video. But I've become so disassociated with that character in my mind because it's become a character and not just an avatar. I feel like I need to replace him now. And I'm like, thank God I'm so small. No one's going to really notice or care. If I had gotten big in the last 4 years, it would be such a big jarring change. But enough about me. You also have another character that was appearing in a number of videos on your channel at one point, Ellipses.
Ellipses. I originally designed her to be a foil for the character Random Person. That went horribly because her personality didn't foil him at all, but she complemented him very well because originally RP was an egotistical narcissist. He was basically all the traits I liked about me, but amped up. So instead of being self-confident, he was narcissistic and whatnot. And Ellipsis was meant to push that aspect of him. You can find her throughout some of my videos, but I haven't used her in so long for a couple of reasons. The PNGs I have for her, they're like over 1,000 of them. I don't like them anymore. And the other reason is a lot of times I'm talking to the audience. So Ellipsis in the PNGs I have for her, she acts as the audience. It doesn't work that well anymore because both my current avatar is tall, so it doesn't work with Ellipsis also being tall. So I would have to rework her. I do plan on redesigning her in hopes of bringing her back as a kind of switching the roles, making RP tall and making her a chibi character of sorts, but that's going to take some time because I have to redraw a bunch of vectors for her.
Well, I look forward to that because I quite enjoyed her character and her appearances and the little comics that went up on DeviantArt. Aside from YouTube, because when I first found you, it was through Picarto and you were doing a mix of art and I think scripting and stuff for making a game for your college course.
I started doing Shady Doorags when I was in college, so I have a lot of passion projects that I want to get done. Shady Doorags was never meant to stop on YouTube, and I never hope it stops at YouTube. YouTube is the stepping stone I want to push Shady Doorags out. What I'm trying to do with Shady Doorags is I'm trying to create an atmosphere of creativity and communication, and I want to do that through various means. Video games is one of them. Once I go full time on YouTube, you better believe I'm going to start designing some video games. Video games, art, literature, all those I want to dive into, but those require time. You don't get a lot of time when you're an adult unless you're self-employed. So that's why YouTube is like the fundamental place where I work. I kind of step back from the art stuff and the programming stuff right now, just because I don't have all the time in the world to work on them. I can only choose one, and YouTube right now is the most attention gathering. So that's where I'm going with that right now.
I can relate to that. Adulting in general is very time consuming.
Who has time for sleep? Like it takes so much out of your day.
My sleep is always messed up, so I don't sleep enough, but I always sleep way too long at the same time. It's this weird contradiction that I find myself in, and then I never do anything for my YouTube channel because I'm constantly catching up on watching the channels that I follow. I do it to myself though, so I don't have anyone to blame but myself.
Yeah, that's a hardship for me because I want to be working on stuff, and then my fans will recommend I watch something, and I'm like, I have to watch a whole season of that? That's a lot of time. And I'm telling myself, Shady, it's for the YouTube channel, okay? It's for research. You can take some time to do something for your YouTube channel. Yeah, but then I'm not editing. You're researching.
Yeah, no, I've tried to do that where I've tried to play stuff and have stuff going on a second screen while editing other things, but then I get too distracted by one of the two things that I pay no attention to the other, and it's like I have to restart that from scratch because I have no idea what the hell just happened.
Yeah, been there, done that, got a t-shirt.
They have caps now. You mentioned literature, and I know you had one story that you had written that I was reading at one point. I don't remember what it's called.
It was called Wiggerlog. I wrote that a while ago. I actually did some videos on my Shady Doorags channel reading it out loud. Wiggerlog was a fantasy story about this kid who lived in a world of war, but it was a more playful story, so it wasn't taken as serious as you would. It was heavily inspired by manga stories, by shonen, really. Like once you read it, you'll see all the cliches of shonen in there, and that's exactly what I wanted, shonen cliches. The kid is teamed up with a war hero, and they go out and have various adventures, and they find themselves wrapped up in some kind of mystery. The funny thing is, I never posted I finished the first book, but I never posted its sequel. It was supposed to be a trilogy, but I got through like the first 60 chapters of the second book. But after college, like I just found myself working more and more on my YouTube channel. I still have the entire story in my brain and how it plays out, and I've got like a bunch more stories, which is why I want to get back to literature and get back to writing stuff, so I can improve my own skills in that way. But it's just funny to think that I had that whole story written out, outlined. There's the outlines are still in my computer, the files, but I just never got around to writing it. That's why there's the classic advice that just write something, because if you stop, you can risk stopping permanently. That's exactly what happened to me.
Oh yeah, I know that, except I'm not together enough to actually come up with a whole story. I write a chapter or two, and then I just draw blanks, and then I move on to something else. If I can dig up the link that I had to the first book online to read, and I had a link to it, if I can dig that up, I'll put that in the description so people can go read it.
It's on my DeviantArt.
Also, that's even better. Then because I was just going to link to your DeviantArt anyway in the description, so your art and your story will be on DeviantArt. Link in the description for anyone who's looking to check out either his art or the writing. I recommend it. I was enjoying it to an extent. Like, I don't enjoy stuff as much as I used to anymore because I'm just an old cynical. My instinct is to swear, but I know that like you don't like swearing, so it's like I need to be more creative with words. I used to be more creative. I'm old and cynical and angry person now.
I went back and I read it. I was like, wow, cliche after cliche after cliche. But I had so much fun at the time writing it. And I was like, what was I thinking? Young, little, naive me.
Did you ever get the moments where you read something and you see like all of the red flags of writing? Like this could have been written shorter, this word's used too much, this doesn't make as much sense.
I remember when I got to the end of writing the first book, my writing in the earlier chapters were actually better. Because I didn't care as much about it. And then once I got to the later chapters, I started being overly complicated with the language instead of just saying what I wanted to say. And I go back and I read the book, and I'm like, wow, yeah, the later chapters are much less fluid than the older chapters.
Oh yeah, no, I think YouTuber and author Jenna Moresi, one of her tips is that feel free to use the word said. I know it's something that high school and all that teaches you never to say, is to never write down, is that this character said this. Like, said is not a bad word. Use it. In fact, use it more than any other way to end off, like a cap off a sentence that someone just spoke in a story.
That's a trap I fall into. They taught me, think of a word starting with every letter in the alphabet for said, and try to use those. And every time I get to he said, she said, it's like, nope, not said, asked, pondered, thought out loud. It's like, you can say said.
I personally abuse the word sigh, so everyone sighs everything they say, or like sigh after they say it.
I'm having so much fun. Sigh. Is she being sarcastic? No, she's being serious. Why did she sigh it?
I'm fairly sure if I go into an old roleplay forum, I recently quit this year and went through all my posts. 80% of the sentences are capped off with sighing or did an action. So I don't actually say anything like said or sigh or asked. It's just then did an action. And I'm like, it's so painful sometimes to look back at my old writing. Yeah. Oof.
Would you like a hint?
Oh, it's a hint. I need a video game. Where's the button? There's the hint button. I suppose, like, we've covered your YouTube channel and we've discussed your literature. We've mentioned that you do art, but we haven't talked too much about that. So, I guess, what got you into doing art?
Oh, that's an interesting tale. So, growing up, I realized things, but I had a hard time explaining them to people. The reason for that is because whenever I'm talking, I overthink what I say. Now, that's a good thing for script writing because you can think everything through over and over again. But when you're in the heat of a conversation, you have a hard time getting those words out because, you know, my brain moves rather slowly, I should say. I'm very intelligent, but my brain takes a while to get to the thing it wants to do. So I've always drawn just for fun, you know, just little sketches here and there. But one day I drew this picture. It's on my DeviantArt. It's called I'm Sorry and You. It's about a scene in Majora's Mask, the video game Majora's Mask. It shows Cafe, and he's been in the mission where he's supposed to get his mask back. He failed. And the reason I drew that picture was because when I was a kid, that was one of the saddest moments in video games for me, because during the time, just to reset the scene, the world is ending. He has failed to get back the symbol of his love, and he's going to be trapped in this place forever as the world ends. And he tells Link, the main character, to save himself. And I was just so sad at the time as a kid. When I was getting into drawing, I drew that picture. And even though I would say by my standards today now, it's not that good of a drawing, it perfectly represented what I wanted to say. And I didn't need words to do it. I just needed an image. And I came to a realization that art can express so much without words. And it became very important to me to do that because, like I said, growing up, I fumbled with my words. It was so hard to just get a proper sentence out and explain it properly to people. To do that with just a picture so perfectly, in my opinion, was amazing to me. And so I started drawing more and more because I wanted to get into it. Like I said before, I've since stopped because I'm trying to get more into YouTube and build that up. And then once that's built up, I can explore the other avenues. But that's the main spark behind my art process, is that I want to communicate ideas as clearly as possible. And words don't always do that the best way, which is interesting because words are more direct. But sometimes a picture or a sculpture or some kind of art-focused medium can do it much better.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've always wanted to sort of like, well, since high school, to draw better, but I'm very lazy about it. But I was a very quiet kid myself, so that's why I got into writing a lot. So I'll often, instead of talking to someone directly, I will send them messages, even if I'm like in the same building, because it's easier that way for me to communicate. It's a shame that you've stopped drawing, and I hope you can get back to that at some point. I quite liked like the little comics you used to do with Ellipses and Random Person. I thought they were both quite interesting characters. I'm actually going to probably this weekend try and sketch random person, because I decided that if I'm going to try and learn to draw, I'm going to try and start by sketching people's avatars and mascots that are relatively simple shapes.
Definitely shoot me a link when you're done. I am a sucker for fan art. Like, I used to host fan art contests for The Legend of Zelda because I just love seeing other people's interpretation of the exact same thing I experienced.
Ah, yes. I like the idea of writing, because if you have a character that doesn't have a set by the creator image of them, and just like a written description, you can see so much fan art where everyone's depiction of them is different in certain ways. It's super interesting, and I've always wanted to get big enough to have my characters done that way, fan art of my characters. But it's getting big is or getting popular enough to get that to happen is pretty hard.
Gathering an audience is the hardest part of YouTube. Some people do get lucky, but you'll have like the most talented people on earth join YouTube, any kind of art-based media where you express yourself, and then they just can't gather an audience. It's just like, if you could just get past that step. I know when my Diane video went big, a lot of people were coming to my channel and being like, oh, hey, this is a cool channel. Why have I never seen this before? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. I've been making the same type of content for, I think it was 2 years. when I first did that, I was like, I've been making the same content, and people are just now finding it, you know. So gaining an audience and then keeping that audience, that's like the two hardest things when it comes to this line of work.
Oh yeah, I had to explain to someone recently how to get a partnership on Twitch. Is that one of the requirements is maintaining for 30 days a average of viewership of 75 people, and they thought like, that's not that hard. I'm like, it's easy to get a lot of followers because they'll follow and never come back, but maintaining the average of 3 viewers for 30 days to get affiliate is hard. 75 is like, you have to really break out and get lucky to get that.
The subscribers are, you know, they give you a good rush, but it's the returning subscribers that really matter.
Yeah, I tell people, like, you know, I've got, like, you know, just over 100 subs on YouTube, and then like, oh, that's great. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good, but I would really like it if I had that many views per video. But it's been great to see that you exploded. Like, I hadn't realized how much your channel had actually grown. Like, after you posted that first video, I hadn't paid much. I was just like, oh, Shady's got videos up. I'll watch those. Those are fun. It wasn't until like months later I was like, Shady's got how many subs? How many views? I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. I'm like, that's awesome. Because that was a couple years ago now. I've known like you and Mad Munchkin and Tie and Dagger since like the end of 2015. I've just spaced out for 3 years, and now everything's like, I don't know if this happened a long time ago or recently.
2015, I believe, is when I started, either 2015 or 2016, when I started Shady Doorags. I've been on YouTube since 2009. But the first video that got really popular, the Diane video, was 2017. Depending on when you watch from there to there. 2018 is when I got 10,000 subscribers. I hit 10,000 right at the beginning of 2019.
That's really great work, and I'm so glad for you. It's really hard to break through on YouTube. Personally, I shot myself in the foot by doing a year's worth of PUBG content when everyone stopped caring about PUBG, which really didn't mesh with any of the other content I made, but that's on me, again. I'm very bad at doing things consistently.
Yeah, you get kind of scared of moving on to different content. I've been forcing myself to not only move on to different shows, but also try different types of content. You know, there's some videos on my channel that now are more comedy centered, because I've been told I'm a decent comedian. It's just that's not what people come to my channel for. They come for the analysis. So I've been trying to do a bit more comedy stuff, and some of them like it, but you can also do the other extreme, whereas instead of people getting tired of your content, they get tired of you not posting the thing they came for. Oh yeah, it's a delicate balance.
Like, they come for that one niche thing that you cover out of all these other things that you cover. And then once you stop doing that for a while, they bugger off. I do believe, as you said, watching new stuff, you recently caved and watched Rick and Morty.
Yes, I shouldn't say caved. I've always wanted to watch Rick and Morty. I've seen various clips of it on YouTube, and they always entertain me. I just didn't have access to it for a long time. Then, way earlier this year, I did have access to it. But like I said, watching a show requires time, and it's just like, I don't want to dedicate time to doing that when I could be editing another BoJack Horseman video, etc., etc. This recent month, I was supposed to be moving, but that got postponed. But I told my audience that I would still be taking some time off, so I did still have a little bit of free time. So I was just like, you know what? I've got a little bit of free time. I'm just going to binge watch this show. Everybody wants me to do it. Everybody wants me to cover it. So I'll go and watch it. It's a really good show. It's exactly what I wanted. It's more entertaining to me than BoJack Horseman. I like it more than BoJack Horseman, but I would say objectively, BoJack Horseman does what it's supposed to do better than Rick and Morty does. In some ways, they're not comparable. In other ways, they are. I think that BoJack's secondary focus, which is comedy, is better than Rick and Morty's secondary focus, which is the story and the characters. Both of them are top-notch in what they primarily focus on, but Rick and Morty falls short in its secondary purpose.
Yes, I've always felt that Rick and Morty, there was some parts of it, I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like, this isn't as good as I was expecting, but still quite enjoyable. But since you've watched that now, is there anything particular that's like next up on your list of when you get time to watch that you'll watch?
Disenchantment Part 2. I've already got a video coming up. It's like a year-long series on Disenchantment Part 1. And the final video I've already recorded, and I'm trying to get it released before Part 2 comes out. Once Part 2 comes out, I really want to get into it, but that depends on Part 2. If Part 2 doesn't give me anything to talk about, then, I can't talk about it. But I'm just really excited for that show. F is for Family, I would like to get more into because there's a lot you can talk about with that show. Season 4 is not going to come out until next year, I believe, but I've got 3 seasons worth of content that I can get to. And like I mentioned before, once season 6 of BoJack Horseman comes out, I'm going to be going full speed on that one. I recently got a new program that allows me to edit videos much faster, which will allow me to go from, I've been making 1 video a week I've been trying to stick to that schedule. 1 video a week since 2017. I've been trying to do 1 video a week. I can finally move on to 2 videos a week because my rendering process isn't going to take freaking forever to do.
Oh, I feel that pain. Sometimes I mess up my editing. It's like, okay, it's done, but I maybe over-edited it. Now the render's going to take like 3 hours. And I'm like, I don't have the time for that because I can't use my computer for anything else.
For me, it was getting the footage. Like, I would gather the footage, but my editing software could only edit certain types of videos. So I had to render it a very specific way, and it was such a long process. I recently realized why it took so long. It's because the software I was using was heavily outdated. I did not know this, and I've been using it for like the past 7 years. I've probably been using that same software. It's been outdated for almost 15 years, and I didn't know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, almost 50 years. Yeah, I didn't know. So I recently, just because I ran into a problem I was editing a video for somebody else, dealing with other people's stuff, you kind of care a bit more because it's their stuff. You don't want to mess it up for them. And I was like, I need something better than this. And I looked up my own software and I saw how outdated it was. And I was like, oh, that's why. And I grabbed a new one and I made a 30-minute long video in like less than a day, because the rendering time for the footage took such little time. I facepalmed myself so hard. I knew I was doing something that was making it take forever, and I could easily switch, but I didn't know for the longest time. I didn't know what. Now I know.
Oh, yeah, no, that's a big oof right there. I've got new software for editing myself because I picked up Sony Vegas Pro 15 or whatever from Humble Monthly or Humble Bundle. So I need to activate those codes and try that out, because currently I'm using part of my professional editor friend's Adobe CC Cloud version of Premiere Pro. That has so many bugs in it that annoy me. Also, it costs them like $15 a month or something. Or maybe actually I think it's a bit more. I think it's like $40 a month. And I'm like, for something that I use maybe once every like 2 or 3 months because of how infrequently I produce videos, so I really should get a new thing that I can use that it's paid for, that I don't have to get constantly paid for.
Editing is hard. It's work.
Oh yeah. Some of my videos, editing is fine. A lot of it, since mine is mostly I record audio, edit that, which is a pain. But then slapping together videos is usually pretty easy because it's just art assets over the top, done to match audio cues. Though I can agree with how much of a pain it is when your program doesn't like the format of other footage you want to put in, which is why only one of my videos actually has footage that isn't like my art assets, which was, I think, one of my very first videos, which was about an MLP episode. Everything else I had, all the episodes I had, are an MKV, and Adobe doesn't like MKV whatsoever. So I had to get AVI files from a friend, and then I never used them. I don't want to go back to doing MLP stuff because I've stopped caring.
Yeah, the MLP fan base is dying out. And that's not just because the end of the show. Like for the past, I would say 2 years, it's been dying out.
Yeah, it's getting really quiet. I managed to, for a bit, revive my local city's community, but it's since then, that was like a couple years ago, so it's gotten really quiet. So there's like a small handful of us that are really still around that do meetups and hang out and like watch the show when episodes air. It's like 8 of us at tops.
Silver Quill and FLB Equestria, they still get a decent amount of views, but for the most part, yeah, you don't see. I mean, I already didn't like the show, but there were some things I was interested in the show, and I stopped really caring after I want to say season 6, at the beginning of season 7. Once they started doing the school thing, that's when I just stopped caring altogether. It was mainly because of Starlight Glimmer for me. I just really didn't like her, and they were focusing a lot on her character. So after 2 seasons of that, I was done.
Personally, I like Starlight Glimmer, but I feel like Starlight Glimmer as a bad guy and Starlight Glimmer as a good guy aren't the same character. They're not. Fundamentally 2 different characters. They're both good, but they're both held down significantly by the show trying to make them the same character.
That's really what it is. It's not Starlight herself. It's how her character was treated. Like I felt she constantly upstaged the other characters, and they butchered continuity just to make her the good person in a lot of episodes. And that is something that annoys me to no end. Butchering character and butchering continuity. Like I cannot stand that.
Yeah, ironically, I think the season that introduced her was the worst season we've had, season 5.
I highly liked most of season 5. It was only the ending of season 5 I didn't like.
Actually, I like the start and I like the ending. A lot of in the middle was either mediocre or bad for me, except for like the very end part of the final episode where you know that they just rushed it because they were told to get it done. That was super bad. Worst song in the show. I keep coming up with points and then going on tangents and losing myself. I should write stuff down more often, which you think I would do, being someone who considers themselves a writer, but I don't. We've covered just about everything that I can think of, unless you're like secretly a stunt man or something that we can talk about as well. And it's been a fair while, so I'd say we should wrap this up. For everyone that's come to check this out, if you're interested, links to Shady's DeviantArt and YouTube will be in the description below. Is there anything else you want to plug of yours? Social media, Patreon, anything like that, Shady?
Yeah, sure. I'll plug all of those. You can find me on Twitter at /ShadyDoorags, I think. You can find me on Patreon at /ShadyDoorags, I think. You can find me on Subscribestar at /ShadyDoorags, I think. Maybe. We'll see.
I've never heard of Subscribestar before. What is that?
It's a Patreon alternative. They've been out, I believe, for a while, but it was only in the recent Patreon controversy that they started getting big, because a lot of people fled from Patreon and they needed another site, and they went to Subscribestar.
Ooh, I should one day, when I'm actually big enough to warrant having 2 things, look into that. Links to all of those will be in the description below. One last question. I think I've forgotten to ask the last couple of people. Is there anything coming out to your channel soon, or like in the next few months, that you could tease us with?
I would say that red panda, that chibi little red panda. I'll be paying her a visit.
Oh, Gretzko. Ooh. I'm looking forward to that. I need to watch season 2 still. I keep forgetting that I have access to Netflix and I really need to get back to watching things. But that I'm really looking forward to. That should be a lot of fun. I believe that was the final question. So thanks for coming on the show, Shady.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And for everyone listening, until next time, cheers.